Excuse me, which sports scholarship brought you here?
I'm exactly where I belong, Professor.
Picture this, a lecture hall at one of America's most prestigious universities, Westfield University. The kind of place where legacies are built and futures are forged. Advanced Quantum Physics 401. The cream of the crop. Students who've earned their way into one of the hardest classes on campus. At the front of the room stands Professor Katherine Whitmore. 58 years old, silver hair perfectly styled, designer clothes that cost more than most students' monthly rent. She commands the room with the kind of presence that comes from 3 decades of teaching at an elite institution. She's scanning the lecture hall, her eyes moving across the sea of faces, when suddenly they stop. They land on a young black student sitting in the front row. Notebook open. Pen ready. Focused. And then she says it. "Excuse me, which sports scholarship brought you here?" "This is Physics 401, not the athletic center." The room goes silent. You could hear a pin drop. Students shift in their seats. Some stare at their desks. Others exchange uncomfortable glances. Because everyone in that room knows what just happened. Everyone feels it. The student looks up at her. Composed. And he says, "I'm exactly where I belong, Professor." The tension in that room could cut steel. And that young man? His name is Isaiah Thompson. And what Professor Whitmore doesn't know yet is that her assumption, her casual dismissal, her prejudice is about to unravel everything she's built. Because Isaiah isn't just any student. And this story is about to take you on a journey that will make you angry, make you cheer, and maybe, just maybe, make you believe that justice can still win. But let's rewind. Let's go back to earlier that morning, before that moment in the lecture hall. Because to understand what's about to happen, you need to know who Isaiah Thompson really is. It's 6:30 in the morning. The sun is just starting to peek over the Gothic buildings of Westfield University, casting long shadows across manicured lawns that have been maintained for over 150 years. And there's Isaiah, walking across campus with a worn backpack slung over one shoulder, earbuds in, a thick notebook tucked under his arm. He's 19 years old, a sophomore. And if you could see inside his mind right now, you'd see something beautiful. Equations. Not just memorized formulas but living, breathing mathematics. Quantum mechanics dancing through his thoughts like poetry. Wave functions collapsing. Particles entangling. The fundamental nature of reality itself, playing out in his imagination as he walks. See, for Isaiah, physics isn't just a subject. It's a language. It's the way the universe speaks. And he's been fluent in it since he was 12 years old, sitting in a Detroit public library, reading books his mother scraped together money to buy him. His dorm room tells you everything you need to know about him. Posters of Neil deGrasse Tyson, Albert Einstein, and Katherine Johnson cover the walls. His desk is buried under advanced physics textbooks, some borrowed from the library, some fifth-hand copies he bought online. There are handwritten proofs scattered across every surface, his own work, problems he's solving just because he can't stop thinking about them. His roommate, Chin Lu, an engineering student who's almost as obsessed with thermodynamics as Isaiah is with quantum physics, had joked with him just that morning. "Dude, you know it's possible to think about something other than Schrodinger's cat, right? Like, I don't know, food? Sleep? Anything normal?" Isaiah had just laughed. Because Chin got it. Chin understood what it meant to love something so much it consumed you. But there was something else on Isaiah's mind that morning. His mother had called the night before. She always called on Wednesday nights, after her shift at the hospital where she worked as a nurse. She was proud of him. So proud it made her voice shake when she talked about him. Her son at Westfield University. Her son studying quantum physics. Her son who was going to be everything she never got the chance to be. But she was worried too. Worried about money. Worried about whether he was eating enough. Worried about whether he belonged in a place like Westfield, where the other students' parents donated buildings and endowed chairs. What she didn't need to worry about was how he got there. Isaiah was at Westfield on a full-ride academic scholarship. Not basketball. Not football. Not track. Academic excellence. Exceptional aptitude in physics. The kind of scholarship they give to maybe 5 students a year out of thousands of applicants. As Isaiah walked that morning, he was actually solving an equation in his head. A problem from his advanced quantum mechanics homework that had been bothering him. He was so absorbed in it that he nearly walked straight into another student. He pulled out his earbuds, apologized, and kept moving. Because that's who Isaiah was. Focused, driven, brilliant, and completely unaware that in a few hours, someone would look at him and see nothing but assumptions. Westfield University isn't just a school. It's an institution. Founded in 1842, It sits on 200 acres of pristine New England landscape, all Gothic architecture and ivy-covered walls. The kind of place where every building has a name plaque honoring some wealthy family's generous contribution. Where portraits of distinguished alumni line the hallways, and 98% of them are white men in suits. As Isaiah walked through campus that morning, he passed clusters of students. And if you listened to their conversations, you'd hear a different world than the one he came from. Students casually discussing their winter break ski trips to Aspen, internships at their parents' firms, networking events with family friends who were CEOs and senators. Isaiah had learned to navigate this world. He didn't resent these students, most of them anyway. They couldn't help where they came from any more than he could. But he also knew he was different. His winter break was spent working at a community center in Detroit, tutoring kids who looked like him, who needed to see someone who made it out. Near the physics building, Isaiah ran into Dr. Harold Martinez, one of the few Latino professors in the department. Dr. Martinez had taken Isaiah under his wing from day one, saw something in him that reminded Martinez of his own journey through academia as a first-generation college student. "Isaiah, ready for Whitmore's class today?" Isaiah had smiled, but there was something in Dr. Martinez's expression. A warning. A concern. "Listen, I know you're excited about the research assistant announcement. You should be. Your work is exceptional. But..." Dr. Martinez had paused, choosing his words carefully. "Professor Whitmore is brilliant. Truly one of the best quantum physicists in the country. But she's also old-fashioned in her views. Just be prepared for that." Isaiah had nodded, not entirely sure what that meant, but filing it away. He met up with his study group outside the lecture hall. Sarah Chin, a physics major with a genuine kindness that made her stand out in the competitive program. Brandon Fitzgerald, a wealthy white student who wore his privilege casually, not maliciously, he just didn't know any other way to be. And Priya Kapoor, an Indian-American woman who carried the weight of being one of the few women in the advanced physics program, constantly having to prove herself. They were talking about today's class. Professor Whitmore was finally announcing who she'd selected as her research assistant for her quantum computing project. This wasn't just any position. This was the golden ticket. Work directly with one of the leading researchers in the field. A guaranteed letter of recommendation to top graduate programs. MIT, Stanford, Princeton. This assistantship was a direct path to the future Isaiah had been dreaming about since he was a kid. He'd been working toward this for 2 years. Every paper, every exam, every extra hour in the lab, all building to this moment. Sarah had nudged him. "You've got this, Isaiah. Your quantum tunneling paper was insane. I barely understood half of it and I got an A- in the class." Brandon had agreed. "Seriously, man. If she doesn't pick you, the system is broken." Priya had smiled, but there was something in her eyes. She knew what it was like to be underestimated. "Just be ready for anything," she'd said quietly. Isaiah had felt confident. Nervous but confident. His work spoke for itself. Had to. They arrived at the lecture hall early. Isaiah liked to sit in the front row, close enough to see every equation, every detail. Close enough to ask questions. Professor Katherine Whitmore was already there, standing at the podium, reviewing papers. She was the kind of woman who commanded attention without saying a word. 58, but she carried herself like someone who'd never doubted her place in the world. Silver hair cut in a sharp bob. Designer clothes that whispered money. A presence built on 3 decades of teaching at Westfield. Her family had donated the library wing. Her father had taught in this very department before her. She wasn't just a professor. She was legacy. She was institution. She was Westfield. Isaiah had approached her before class started. He needed to ask about office hours, wanted to clarify something from the last lecture. Simple. Professional. She looked up from her papers as he approached. And in that moment Isaiah saw it. The way her eyes traveled over him. The slight tightening of her expression. The body language that said, "Why are you here?" "Professor Whitmore, I wanted to ask about office hours. I had a question about..." She cut him off. "Office hours are for students struggling with the material. You might be more comfortable in introductory courses." The words hit him like a slap. Isaiah felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice steady. "I have a 4.0 GPA in the department, Professor." She barely blinked. Grade inflation is everywhere these days. Other students were filing into the lecture hall now. They heard this exchange. They saw it. The discomfort rippled through the room. Sarah's eyes went wide. Brandon looked down at his notebook. Priya's expression hardened. Isaiah walked back to his seat. He sat down. open his notebook. But his hand was gripping his pen so tight his knuckles went pale. Because in that moment he understood what Dr. Martinez had meant. Old-fashioned views. And then class began. The moment from the beginning of our story. Professor Whitmore stood at her podium, scanning the room, and her eyes landed on Isaiah. Front row. Focused. Ready. Excuse me, which sports scholarship brought you here? This is Physics 401, not the Athletic Center. But now you know the context. Now you know that this wasn't just a casual question. This was an assumption. A presumption. A judgment based on nothing but what she saw when she looked at him. Isaiah looked up at her. And in front of the entire class, with every student watching, he said, "I'm exactly where I belong, Professor." The silence was deafening. Students shifted in their seats. Some stared at their desks. Others exchanged glances. Because everyone in that room knew what they just witnessed. Everyone felt the injustice of it. But Professor Whitmore just turned back to her lecture notes as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just dismissed one of the most brilliant students in her class based on the color of his skin. Class began. Quantum entanglement. Schrödinger equations. Complex mathematical proofs. Isaiah raised his hand. He had a question. A genuine question about the material. Professor Whitmore saw his hand. And she ignored it. He kept his hand up. She called on another student. He raised his hand again later. Again she looked right past him. 3 times. 3 times he raised his hand, ready to participate, ready to engage with the material he loved, and 3 times she acted like he was invisible. Sarah leaned over and whispered, "This is insane. She's ignoring you on purpose." Isaiah didn't respond. He just kept taking notes. Kept solving the equations in his head. Kept being exactly what he'd always been. Brilliant. Focused. Undeniable. Because he knew something Professor Whitmore was about to learn the hard way. You can try to make someone invisible. You can try to diminish them. You can try to reduce them to your assumptions. But the truth? The truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, it burns everything false to the ground. Have you ever been in a room where someone looked at you and decided who you were before you even opened your mouth? Have you ever had to prove you belong somewhere that should have welcomed you from the start? Drop your story in the comments. Because this is just the beginning of Isaiah's journey, and trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. And if you want to see what happens when Isaiah finally gets the chance to show Professor Whitmore exactly who he is, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what comes next is going to shock you. The lecture continues. Professor Whitmore moves to the heart of today's topic, quantum entanglement. The phenomenon Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. The idea that 2 particles can be connected in such a way that measuring one instantly affects the other, no matter how far apart they are. It's one of the most beautiful, mind-bending concepts in all of physics. Whitmore writes an equation on the board. Complex. Elegant. And then she turns to the class with a question. Can anyone explain how quantum entanglement could theoretically be used to create unhackable communication systems? It's a challenging question. The kind that separates students who memorize from students who truly understand. Brandon Fitzgerald raises his hand. Whitmore calls on him immediately. "Mr. Fitzgerald?" Brandon takes a shot at it. He talks about quantum states and measurements, but he's missing key pieces. His answer veers into classical physics territory. It's not quite right. But watch how Whitmore responds. She smiles. Gently. Warmly. "Good try, Mr. Fitzgerald. You're on the right track with the measurement aspect. Let's build on that thought." She guides him. Encourages him. Treats his wrong answer like a stepping stone to understanding. Sarah Chin raises her hand next. Whitmore calls on her. Sarah gives a partially correct answer. She understands the quantum states but misses the application to cryptography. And again Whitmore builds on it. "Excellent start, Miss Chin. You've identified the key principle. Now, can anyone take us further? See the pattern? Wrong answers met with encouragement. Partial answers met with support. Now Isaiah raises his hand. He's been sitting there listening and he knows this. He doesn't just know the textbook answer. He understands it at a level most undergraduate students never reach. He's read papers on quantum cryptography. He's worked through the mathematics himself. His hand is up. Whitmore sees it. You can tell she sees it because her eyes pass right over him. She scans the room looking for another hand. Any other hand. But no one else is raising their hand. The other students are looking at Isaiah. They know he knows. Some of them are waiting to hear what he has to say. Finally, with clear exasperation in her voice, Whitmore sighs. "Yes, Mr. Thompson?" Isaiah sits up. He's not intimidated. He's in his element. And he explains it. not just explains it, he illuminates it. He talks about how entangled photons can be used to generate encryption keys. He explains how any attempt to intercept or measure these photons would collapse their quantum state, immediately alerting both parties to the security breach. He goes further, adding an insight about recent experimental work on quantum repeaters that Whitmore hadn't even mentioned. He's synthesizing information from multiple sources, applying principles across domains, showing true mastery. The classroom goes silent. Not the uncomfortable silence from before. This is the silence of students recognizing brilliance. Sarah's eyes are wide. Brandon is nodding, impressed. Priya has stopped taking notes just to listen. Even some of the students who'd been half paying attention are now fully focused. Because what Isaiah just did wasn't recite a textbook. What he just did was teach. For a moment, you can see it on some of the students' faces. Respect. Admiration. The recognition that they're in the presence of someone special. And then Professor Whitmore speaks. Memorization is not understanding. Anyone can repeat a textbook. The words cut through the room like ice. Students shift uncomfortably. Because they all know, everyone in that room knows, that what Isaiah just did was not memorization. That wasn't repetition. That was comprehension at the highest level. Isaiah keeps his composure. His voice is steady, respectful, but firm. That wasn't from the textbook, Professor. That was application of. She cuts him off. Don't be argumentative. It's unbecoming. And just like that, she dismisses him. She turns back to her lecture notes as if the most insightful answer given in class that day was somehow an inconvenience. The discomfort in the room is palpable now. This isn't subtle anymore. This isn't something students can ignore or rationalize away. This is blatant. Priya leans over to Isaiah and whispers, "That was brilliant." She's being unfair. Isaiah doesn't respond. He just goes back to taking notes. But if you look closely, you can see his hand gripping his pen tighter than before. You can see the tension in his jaw. You can see a young man who's faced this kind of dismissal before, who's had to be twice as good to get half the recognition, who's tired but not broken. Because here's what makes this moment so devastating. Isaiah didn't just answer correctly. He exceeded expectations. He demonstrated mastery. And still it wasn't enough. Still he was reduced to a stereotype. Still he was dismissed. And every student in that room is watching it happen. The lecture moves forward, but the energy has shifted. Students are taking notes, but there's an undercurrent of tension now. An awareness. And then, near the end of class, Professor Whitmore makes the announcement everyone's been waiting for. As you all know, I'm currently conducting cutting-edge research in quantum computing. Specifically, I'm working on quantum error correction protocols in collaboration with researchers at MIT. You can feel the room lean forward. This is it. I'm looking for a research assistant. This is not a casual position. This is an opportunity to work on research that could fundamentally change how we approach quantum computation. The selected student will work directly with me, contribute to papers that will be published in top-tier journals, and receive a letter of recommendation to any graduate program they choose to apply to. MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Caltech. The doors this could open are limitless. The application process is rigorous. I'll need a current research proposal, proof of your GPA, and a faculty recommendation letter. Your proposal should demonstrate original thinking, not just regurgitation of existing work. Isaiah's eyes light up. This is what he's been working toward. This is the dream. 2 years of perfect grades, of extra hours in the lab, of pushing himself to understand not just the what but the why and the how. All of it has been building to this moment. And then Professor Whitmore adds, almost as an afterthought, this position requires utmost dedication. Someone who lives and breathes physics, not someone juggling athletic commitments. She looks directly at Isaiah as she says it. The implication is clear. The accusation is transparent. And it's based on nothing. Nothing except her assumptions. Brandon leans over to Isaiah, keeping his voice low. Dude, you're applying, right? Your quantum tunneling paper was insane. Isaiah nods. He's determined. More determined than ever. Because now it's not just about the opportunity. It's about proving something. It's about showing that her assumptions are wrong. Class ends. Students gather their things. Most of them file out quickly, eager to escape the tension that's been building for the past hour. But Isaiah stays back. He approaches Professor Whitmore's podium. He needs to ask about the faculty recommendation letter. It's required for the application and he needs to know if she'll write one for him. Professor Whitmore, I wanted to ask about the recommendation letter requirement. She doesn't look up from organizing her papers. Mr. Thompson, I don't know you well enough to recommend you. The words don't make sense. Isaiah has taken 2 of her courses. He's sat in her classroom for months. He's earned top grades on every assignment, every exam. I've taken 2 of your courses, Professor, both with A+ grades. Now she looks at him. And there's something in her expression. Not quite hostility, but something close. Condescension, maybe. Dismissal. Grades don't tell the whole story. I recommend students who demonstrate true passion and original thinking. Let that sink in for a moment. Isaiah just demonstrated original thinking not 20 minutes ago in her classroom. He just synthesized complex concepts in a way that impressed every other student there. He has published research. He has a perfect GPA. He lives and breathes physics in a way most students never will. And she's telling him he doesn't demonstrate passion or original thinking. The implication hangs in the air between them. Heavy. Undeniable. She doesn't believe he's capable. She doesn't believe he belongs. And nothing he does, no amount of excellence, is going to change her mind. Isaiah stands there for a moment. He could argue. He could push back. He could list his accomplishments, his publications, his achievements. But he knows it won't matter. You can't logic someone out of a position they didn't logic themselves into. So he just says, "Thank you for your time, Professor." And he walks out. That night, Isaiah is in the library. It's late. Most students have gone back to their dorms, but he's still there, surrounded by books and papers and his laptop glowing in the dim light. He's frustrated. Of course he's frustrated. But he's also focused. Because frustration isn't going to change anything. Work will. Excellence will. Undeniable evidence will. He's working on his research proposal. And it's not just good. It's exceptional. His idea is to use quantum entanglement principles to improve quantum computer error correction. See, one of the biggest challenges in quantum computing is that quantum states are incredibly fragile. Any interference from the environment can cause errors. Isaiah's proposal outlines a novel approach to detecting and correcting these errors using entangled particle systems in a way that hasn't been explored before. It's innovative. It's mathematically rigorous. It's exactly the kind of original thinking Whitmore claimed to value. But as he works, his mind drifts. Back to where this all started. Back to Detroit. He remembers being a kid. 8 years old, maybe 9. His mother working double shifts at the hospital, doing everything she could to keep them afloat. They didn't have much. But his mother, she understood something important. She understood that knowledge was the way out. That education was the ladder her son could climb. She saved money. Scraped together dollars from tips, from overtime, from anywhere she could. And she bought him science books. Not from bookstores, they couldn't afford that. From thrift stores, from library sales, from online sellers offering beat-up used copies. Isaiah would read those books by flashlight under his covers at night. He'd read about Newton and Einstein and Feynman. He'd read about the fundamental forces of the universe, about particles and waves, about the beautiful mathematical equations that governed reality itself. He remembers middle school. Mrs. Rodriguez, his 8th grade science teacher. She was the first person outside his family who saw something in him. Who stayed late after school to tutor him, to push him, to challenge him. Who entered him in science competitions even when he said he wasn't ready. He remembers high school. The physics competition. He was the only black student there. He walked into that room and felt every eye on him. Felt the assumptions. Felt the doubt. And then he won. First place. Beat every other competitor with his understanding of quantum mechanics principles. He remembers the looks on their faces. Surprise. Confusion. Like they couldn't quite reconcile what they saw with what had just happened. This isn't new for Isaiah. The skepticism. The doubt. The need to prove himself over and over again. He's been facing it his entire life. But here's what those experiences taught him. He's built for this. The resistance doesn't break him. It focuses him. It sharpens him. It drives him. He works through the night on his proposal. Refining equations. Checking his logic. Making sure every claim is backed by solid mathematics and sound reasoning. Chin finds him at 3 in the morning, still hunched over his laptop in their dorm room. "Man, you're going to get this. She can't ignore talent forever." Isaiah looks up. He's exhausted. But there's steel in his eyes. Watch her try. Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? It's about whether talent matters. Whether merit matters. Whether excellence can overcome prejudice. Isaiah believes it can. He has to believe it. Because if it can't, then what's the point of any of this? The day comes to submit applications. Students have been working on their proposals for weeks. Some are nervous. Some are confident. All of them understand this is a big opportunity. Professor Whitmore has set up office hours for proposal submissions. Students line up outside her office, clutching their carefully prepared applications. Brandon goes in first. He's in there for about 15 minutes. When he comes out, he's smiling. She loved my idea. She asked really detailed questions and seemed genuinely interested. Other students go in. Some come out looking relieved. Others look nervous but hopeful. Priya goes in. She's brilliant, but she carries the weight of being one of the few women in advanced physics. She's had to deal with her own set of assumptions and biases. She comes out looking cautiously optimistic. And then it's Isaiah's turn. He walks into Professor Whitmore's office. It's exactly what you'd expect. Degrees on the wall. Photos with famous physicists. Books lining every shelf. Awards and honors displayed prominently. He hands over his proposal. 47 pages. Immaculate. Every equation checked and rechecked. Original research. Clear methodology. Innovative approaches. He's also included his published paper from last spring. Quantum decoherence patterns in multiparticle systems. It was published in the undergraduate research journal, peer-reviewed, cited by other researchers. Professor Whitmore takes the proposal. She barely glances at it. Flips through a few pages. Her eyes don't even seem to focus on the content. I'll review it with the others. Isaiah stands there. He's prepared for this moment. He's prepared to discuss his ideas, to answer questions, to defend his reasoning. That's what she did with Brandon, with the other students. Engaged with their ideas. I've included my published paper from the undergraduate research journal. She looks up. And there's something in her expression. Skepticism. Doubt. You're published. The tone. That's what gets you about this moment. The tone. Like she can't quite believe it. Like she's searching for the catch. Yes, last spring. On quantum decoherence patterns. She flips to the publication. Schemes it. And for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickers across her face. It's recognition. She can't deny what's in front of her. This is real research. Real contribution to the field. From a 19-year-old sophomore. But then the expression is gone. Replaced by her usual cool professionalism. We'll see, Mr. Thompson. That's it. That's all he gets. No questions about his methodology. No discussion of his innovative approach. No engagement with his ideas. Isaiah leaves her office with a swirl of emotions. Hope because his work is undeniable. Dread because he knows that sometimes for some people, undeniable isn't enough. A few days later, Dr. Martinez catches Isaiah after a department meeting. Isaiah, I heard you applied for Whitmore's research assistant position. How's that going? There's something in Dr. Martinez's tone. Concern. Understanding. Like he already knows the answer. Isaiah hesitates, then decides to be honest. He talks about the classroom interactions. The dismissive comments. The way Whitmore engaged with other students' proposals but barely looked at his. Dr. Martinez listens. Really listens. And when Isaiah finishes, he nods slowly. I've been here 15 years. I know how things work in this department. And I'm going to give you advice that I wish someone had given me when I was in your position. Document everything. He explains that he's had his own struggles with the old guard faculty. The coded language. The cultural fit conversations. The way excellence gets redefined when it doesn't look the way they expect it to look. Keep copies of everything. Your emails. Your grades. Your publications. Dates and times of interactions. If this goes the way I think it might go, you're going to need evidence. It's sobering advice. But it's real. Later that day, Sarah and Priya find Isaiah in the student center. Sarah is angry. Righteously angry. My brother faced this in medical school. A professor kept passing him over for research opportunities, kept questioning his work. She can't reject you if you're the best candidate. That's discrimination. Priya nods in agreement. Both of them have seen what's happening. Both of them recognize it for what it is. But Isaiah knows something they're still learning. It's harder to prove than you think. Because that's the insidious thing about bias, isn't it? It's rarely overt. It's rarely something you can point to and say, there, that's racism, that's discrimination. It's coded. It's subtle. It's 1,000 small cuts that add up to a wound. It's, I don't know you well enough, to a student who's taken multiple courses with you. It's, anyone can memorize in response to demonstrated understanding. It's, which sports scholarship brought you here, to a student on a full academic scholarship. But Sarah and Priya's support matters. Dr. Martinez's guidance matters. Because Isaiah is realizing something important. He's not alone in this. There are people who see what's happening. People who will stand with him. A coalition is forming. Allies are emerging. And while Isaiah knows the fight ahead won't be easy, he's no longer facing it by himself. But here's the question that's weighing on him. Should he even have to fight? Should excellence require this much proof? Should belonging require this much defense? If you've ever had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition, you know exactly what Isaiah is feeling right now. And if you're wondering what happens next, whether his work will finally speak for itself, whether justice will be served, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what's coming next is going to make you stand up and cheer. A week passes. 7 days of waiting. 7 days of Isaiah checking his email every hour, wondering if maybe, just maybe, his work spoke loudly enough. 7 days of hope fighting against experience. It's Monday morning. Advanced Quantum Physics 401. The same lecture hall where this all began. Students file in with nervous energy. Everyone knows today is the day. Today, Professor Whitmore announces her decision. Isaiah sits in his usual spot. Front row. He's trying to read the expression on Whitmore's face as she organizes her notes at the podium, but she's unreadable. Professional. Detached. The lecture begins. She covers some administrative notes. Discusses the upcoming midterm. And then, almost casually, like she's announcing a change in office hours, she says it. After careful consideration of all the applications, I've selected Brandon Fitzgerald as my research assistant. The room goes completely silent. Not the silence of agreement. Not the silence of satisfaction. The silence of shock. The silence of people who can't quite believe what they just heard. Students exchange glances. Uncomfortable, knowing glances. Because here's what everyone in that room understands. They've seen both proposals. They've heard both students in class. They know Isaiah's work. They know his published research. They know he's operating at a level most undergraduates never reach. And they know Brandon, nice guy that he is, isn't at that level. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Brandon himself looks embarrassed. You can see it on his face. The discomfort of knowing you got something not because you were the best, but because of something else entirely. Something you can't control and didn't ask for. He actually speaks up. Right there in class. Professor, I mean, congratulations to me, but Isaiah's proposal was. Professor Whitmore cuts him off with a look that could freeze fire. Mr. Fitzgerald, are you questioning my judgment? Her voice is ice. Professional ice, but ice nonetheless. Brandon shuts down immediately. Mumbles an apology. Sinks back into his seat. And Isaiah? Isaiah sits there frozen. Completely still. But inside, humiliation is washing over him like a wave. Not the humiliation of failure. The humiliation of injustice. Of knowing you did everything right and still lost. Of being reduced, diminished, dismissed, not because of what you can't do but because of what you look like. Every assumption Professor Whitmore made about him on day one, every dismissive comment, every ignored hand, it all led to this moment. This was inevitable, wasn't it? From the second she looked at him and saw, athlete instead of physicist, this outcome was written. The rest of the lecture is a blur. Whitmore talks about quantum states and probability functions, but no one's really listening. The students are processing. Some are angry. Some are uncomfortable. All of them know they just witnessed something wrong. When class ends, students gather their things in silence. Isaiah doesn't move right away. He sits there, staring at his notebook, at the equations he'd been working on, at the dreams he'd been building. Sarah finds him immediately. She's furious. More furious than Isaiah has ever seen her. This is wrong. Everyone knows you deserved it. Everyone. Your proposal was miles ahead of anyone else's. Other students are nodding. Even some who don't know Isaiah well can see the injustice of it. But Isaiah just says, voice tight with controlled emotion, knowing it and proving it are different things. Because that's the reality he's living in. Everyone can know something is wrong. Everyone can see the bias, feel the unfairness. But knowing and proving are two entirely different things. And without proof, knowledge is just frustrated awareness. That afternoon, Isaiah is alone in a study room in the library. One of those small, windowless rooms students use for group projects or private studying. He's sitting at the table, head in his hands, and for the first time since this all started, he's letting himself feel it. The anger. The hurt. The bone-deep exhaustion of fighting battles you shouldn't have to fight. He pulls out his phone. Stares at it for a moment. Then calls his mother. She answers on the second ring. Baby. I wasn't expecting to hear from you today. Everything okay? And Isaiah tries to say yes. Tries to keep his voice steady. Tries to be strong. But she hears it anyway. Mothers always do. She hears the defeat in the silence between his words. What happened? So he tells her. About the research position. About his proposal. About Brandon's selection. About feeling like no matter what he does, how hard he works, how brilliant he is, it will never be enough for people who've already decided what they're going to see when they look at him. His mother is quiet for a long moment. And then she speaks, and her voice carries the weight of her own experiences, her own battles fought and lost and fought again. Baby, some people will never see your worth. But you know who you are. She tells him something he's heard before but needed to hear again. She tells him about her own dream. How she wanted to be a doctor. How she was smart enough, dedicated enough. How she got accepted to medical school even. But she couldn't afford it. Not with a young son to raise. Not as a single mother working her way through nursing school. So she became a nurse instead. And she's proud of the work she does, proud of the lives she's saved, the patients she's cared for. But there's a part of her that still wonders what if. What if she'd had the resources? What if she'd had the support? What if the world had been just a little bit fairer? I don't want you to have what ifs, Isaiah. I want you to have what is. But then Isaiah says something that breaks her heart. Maybe I don't belong here, Ma. Maybe I should transfer. Go somewhere that actually wants me. The silence on the other end of the phone is heavy. And when his mother speaks again, there's steel in her voice. You stop that right now. You earned your place. You didn't get into Westfield because they were being nice. You didn't get a full academic scholarship because of luck. You earned every single thing you have. And don't you dare shrink yourself to make small-minded people comfortable. She's right. Isaiah knows she's right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two different things. They talk for a few more minutes. She reminds him of every obstacle he's already overcome. Every time someone doubted him and he proved them wrong. Every competition he won, every paper he published, every A+ he earned. This is just another obstacle, baby. And you're going to overcome it too. When he hangs up, Isaiah sits there for a long time. His anger hasn't disappeared. His hurt hasn't gone away. But underneath it, there's something else starting to build. Resolve. And then there's a knock on the door. Priya enters and she's got that look on her face. Determined. Focused. I'm filing a complaint with the dean. This was discrimination. Isaiah's first instinct is to shut it down. To say no, it'll just make things worse. Because that's what he's been taught his whole life, isn't it? Don't make waves. Work twice as hard and keep your head down. Prove yourself through excellence, not confrontation. It'll make things worse. But Priya shakes her head. Or it'll make things right. She sits down across from him. Tells him about her own experiences as a woman in STEM. The professors who assumed she was in the wrong classroom. The lab partners who talked over her. The constant, exhausting need to prove she belongs in spaces that should welcome her. I'm tired of staying silent. And you shouldn't have to either. You did everything right, Isaiah. You followed the rules. You excelled. And you still got cheated. If we don't call it out, nothing changes. Isaiah looks at her. Really looks at her. And he sees an ally. A friend. Someone willing to stand with him even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's risky. Okay, he says quietly. Okay. While Isaiah and Priya are planning their next move, something else is happening. Something they don't know about yet. Dr. Harold Martinez is in his office, going through departmental emails. It's routine stuff mostly. Meeting schedules. Curriculum discussions. Faculty announcements. And then he sees something that makes him stop. An email thread between Professor Whitmore and the previous dean, sent about 8 months ago. The subject line is innocuous, departmental standards and excellence. But the content? The content is anything but innocuous. Whitmore wrote about her concerns regarding maintaining the rigorous standards that have made Westfield's physics department elite. She talked about recent admissions trends and how they might impact the quality and culture of our program. She never uses explicitly racist language. She's too smart for that. Too careful. But the coded language is clear to anyone who knows how to read it. She talks about certain students who might not be the right fit for advanced research. She mentions concerns about lowered expectations and diversity initiatives compromising academic excellence. Dr. Martinez has been in academia long enough to know exactly what she means. He's seen this language before. He's been on the receiving end of it. And here's the thing. This isn't just about Isaiah. This is a pattern. This is evidence of systemic bias. He prints the emails, takes them directly to the dean's office. But there's been a change since those emails were sent. There's a new dean now. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. She's been at Westfield for 6 months, brought in specifically to modernize the university, to address some of the institutional problems that have been festering for decades. She's a black woman. An administrator with a reputation for fairness but also for not backing down from difficult conversations. The board of trustees hired her thinking she'd be a figurehead. They're learning she's anything but. Dr. Martinez knocks on her door. She invites him in and he lays out everything. The emails. The pattern of student selections. Isaiah's case. Dean Okonkwo listens carefully. Takes notes. Asks pointed questions. And then she reveals something that Martinez didn't know. This isn't the first complaint I've received about Professor Whitmore. She's been watching. Quietly documenting. Building a case. Because she knows that in an institution like Westfield, with professors like Whitmore who have decades of history and powerful family connections, you can't act hastily. You need evidence. You need witnesses. You need an airtight case. But what I need, she tells Martinez, is for students to come forward. I need their voices. I need their testimonies. Because without them, this is just faculty politics. Martinez nods. I think you're about to get exactly that. Meanwhile, across campus, something unexpected is happening. Brandon Fitzgerald is standing outside Isaiah's dorm. He's been standing there for 10 minutes trying to work up the courage to knock. Finally he does. Isaiah opens the door, surprised to see him. Can we talk? Brandon asks. They walk to a quiet spot on campus. One of those green spaces between buildings where students sometimes study on nice days. It's evening now, getting dark, and the space is empty. Brandon is nervous, struggling with how to say what he needs to say. I need to tell you something. Before she announced my selection, Professor Whitmore called me into her office. Isaiah waits. She told me that she was selecting me for the position. And then she said something that didn't make sense to me at the time, but now. Brandon swallows hard. She said, "You're the kind of student who represents Westfield's legacy." The words hang in the air between them. I didn't understand what she meant. I thought maybe she was talking about my work or my commitment or something. But then after class, after seeing everyone's reaction, after thinking about your proposal compared to mine, Brandon looks directly at Isaiah. She meant I look like what she thinks a physicist should look like. It's a moment of clarity, of honesty, of privilege recognizing itself and being horrified by it. Your proposal was better than mine, Isaiah. Everyone knows it. I know it. And I think part of me knew it when she selected me, but I didn't want to admit it because it felt good to be chosen, you know? It felt like validation. Brandon takes a breath. I want to decline the position. I'm going to go to her tomorrow and tell her I can't accept it. Isaiah is quiet for a moment. Part of him wants to say yes. Wants to take that gesture and run with it. But he knows something Brandon is still learning. Don't. Brandon looks confused. Don't decline it. That won't fix the system. It won't change what she did or why she did it. It'll just be a band-aid on a broken bone. Isaiah meets his eyes. But thank you. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for seeing it. That matters more than you know. What can I do then? Tell the truth. When the time comes, tell the truth about what she said to you. Brandon nods. I will. I promise. And just like that, the first real crack appears in Professor Whitmore's armor. Because this isn't just Isaiah anymore. This isn't just a student of color claiming discrimination. This is starting to become something bigger. Something harder to dismiss. Allies are forming. Evidence is surfacing. The truth is beginning to emerge from the shadows. But here's what Isaiah knows, what everyone who's fought battles like this knows. The truth emerging and the truth winning are two very different things. Because people with power don't give it up easily. Institutions don't change without a fight. And Professor Katherine Whitmore has power. She has history. She has connections. She has 3 decades of reputation built on the very biases that are now being challenged. This is just the beginning. Have you ever had someone in power admit to you, privately, that they knew an injustice happened but couldn't speak up publicly? Have you ever been the one with the courage to speak up when everyone else stayed silent? Drop your story in the comments below, because what happens next is going to show you exactly why speaking truth to power matters. And if you want to see how this battle unfolds, if you want to witness what happens when a system designed to protect the status quo faces students who refuse to be silent, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because the confrontation that's coming will leave you speechless. 2 days after Brandon's confession, Isaiah receives an email. It's from Dean Okonkwo's office. Short. Professional. Mr. Thompson, please schedule a meeting with me at your earliest convenience to discuss a matter of departmental concern. Isaiah's heart pounds as he reads it. This is it. This is real now. The next afternoon, he walks across campus to the administrative building. It's one of those old, imposing structures that reminds you constantly of Westfield's history and prestige. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, portraits of former university presidents lining the halls. He's directed to Dean Okonkwo's office on the 3rd floor. When he enters, she stands to greet him. Dr. Patricia Okonkwo is in her early 50s, with an air of quiet authority that comes from years of navigating academic politics while maintaining her integrity. She gestures to a chair across from her desk. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming. I want you to know that this conversation is confidential, and I'm here to listen. Her tone is professional, but there's something else there too. Compassion. Understanding. Like she knows exactly how difficult this is for him. Tell me everything, Mr. Thompson. Detail matters. And so Isaiah does. He starts from the beginning. That first day in Whitmore's class when she asked which sports scholarship brought him there. He recounts every ignored hand, every dismissive comment, every time his excellence was minimized or explained away. He talks about the classroom humiliation when she called his brilliant answer memorization. About approaching her for a recommendation letter and being told he didn't demonstrate passion or original thinking, despite his published research. About the research assistant position and how she barely glanced at his 47-page proposal. Dean Okonkwo takes notes. Asks clarifying questions. What date was this? Who else was present? What were her exact words? And then Isaiah does something that surprises her. He pulls out his own documentation. A notebook where he's been keeping detailed notes. Dates. Times. Witnesses. Direct quotes when he could remember them. Dr. Martinez had told him to document everything. Isaiah had listened. Dean Okonkwo looks at the notebook, then at Isaiah. There's respect in her eyes now. You came prepared. I've learned that without evidence, it's just my word against hers. And I know whose word carries more weight in a place like this. The dean sets down her pen. Looks at him directly. I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Thompson. Cases like this are difficult. They're difficult because bias is often subtle. It's difficult because institutions resist change. It's difficult because people with power protect people with power. Isaiah's heart sinks. This sounds like the beginning of a gentle letdown. But then she continues. They're also necessary. Because if we don't confront these patterns, if we don't call out injustice when we see it, then nothing ever changes. And institutions like Westfield become museums of their own prejudices. She explains the investigation process. How she'll need to interview other students. How she'll review documentation and correspondence. How this will take time and how it won't be easy. There will be people who question your motives, who suggest you're just a disgruntled student who couldn't handle rejection. Are you prepared for that? Isaiah thinks about his mother. About every obstacle he's overcome. About every time someone told him he didn't belong and he proved them wrong. Yes, ma'am. I'm prepared. As Isaiah leaves the dean's office, something is shifting on campus. Word is starting to spread. Sarah and Priya have been talking to other students. Dr. Martinez has been having quiet conversations with colleagues. Brandon has told a few people about what Whitmore said to him. The student newspaper gets wind of the story. A reporter approaches Isaiah in the library. He declines to comment, but the reporter starts digging anyway, talking to students, asking questions. And when Professor Katherine Whitmore hears about the complaint, her reaction is exactly what you'd expect from someone who's never been held accountable. Defensive anger. Professor Whitmore calls an emergency meeting with the department chair, Dr. Robert Chin. He's an older man, an accomplished physicist in his own right, but also someone known for avoiding conflict. He'd rather smooth things over than confront difficult truths. Whitmore sits in his office, and she's not the composed, controlled professor from the classroom. She's indignant. Offended. This is a student who couldn't accept that he wasn't the best candidate. And now he's weaponizing race to destroy my reputation. Notice the language. Weaponizing. As if Isaiah's experience of discrimination is a tactical choice rather than a lived reality. Dr. Chin shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Katherine, perhaps we should review the selection process. Just to ensure everything was. Review the selection process? She cuts him off. Robert, my family built this department. The Whitmore Hall of Physics exists because of my family's generosity. I've taught here for 30 years. I've published over 100 papers. I've trained some of the best physicists in the country. And now my academic freedom is being questioned because one student didn't get what he wanted. She's framing this as an attack on academic freedom. On her right as a professor to make independent judgments about student merit. It's a clever reframing, one that will resonate with other faculty members who fear oversight or accountability. Dr. Chin tries again. I understand your concerns, but Dean Okonkwo has to investigate. We should cooperate fully. Of course I'll cooperate. I have nothing to hide. My selection process was based purely on academic merit. If this student's feelings were hurt, that's unfortunate, but hurt feelings don't constitute discrimination. But here's what she does next. It's subtle. It's calculated. And it's devastating. She begins a quiet campaign against Isaiah. In a faculty meeting 2 days later, she mentions, almost as an aside, that some students these days play the victim card when they don't get their way. She doesn't name Isaiah. She doesn't have to. Everyone knows who she's talking about. Some faculty members nod. Others look uncomfortable but say nothing. Silence, as always, favors the status quo. And then she does something even more vindictive. She reviews Isaiah's recent exam in her class. An exam he got a 98 on. She finds minor issues with his answers, subjective things like insufficient explanation, on problems where his mathematics was perfect. She changes his grade from an A to a B+. The justification in her notes is vague. Needs to demonstrate deeper understanding. For a student who just weeks ago synthesized quantum cryptography concepts beyond what she taught in class. Isaiah notices when his grade posts. He stares at it on his computer screen, jaw clenched. He knows exactly what this is. Retaliation. Punishment for speaking up. But he doesn't react publicly. Because he knows that's what she wants. She wants him to get angry, to confront her, to give her ammunition to claim he's hostile or difficult. So he screenshots the grade, documents it, adds it to his notebook. Meanwhile, Sarah and Priya are not staying quiet. They're rallying other students. A petition starts circulating. Students for Academic Integrity and Equity in the Physics Department. It calls for transparency in research assistant selections. 4 bias training for faculty. 4 accountability mechanisms when discrimination occurs. Within 3 days, it has over 300 signatures. Students from across departments sign it. Not just physics majors. Engineering students who've had similar experiences. Chemistry majors. Mathematics majors. Even students from the humanities who recognize injustice when they see it. And Brandon does something that takes real courage. He writes a formal statement supporting Isaiah's account. He details what Professor Whitmore said to him about representing Westfield's legacy. He acknowledges that his selection was based on factors beyond academic merit. It's not easy for him. Some of his friends question why he's getting involved. Some suggest he's betraying a professor who trusted him. But Brandon is learning something important. Sometimes being a good person means being uncomfortable. The battle lines are being drawn. Dean Okonkwo doesn't waste time. She launches a formal investigation. And she's thorough. She starts interviewing students from Professor Whitmore's current and past classes. One by one they come to her office. Some are nervous. Some are eager to speak. All of them have stories. A pattern emerges. And it's not just about Isaiah. A Latina student describes how Whitmore suggested she might be more comfortable in applied physics rather than theoretical. She had a 3.9 GPA. A black student recounts how Whitmore repeatedly mispronounced his name all semester, despite multiple corrections, while learning the names of white students immediately. An Asian American student talks about how Whitmore praised his work ethic, but never his creativity or original thinking, always coding compliments in ways that reinforce stereotypes. But the most powerful testimony comes from someone who's not even on campus anymore. Terrence Williams. He graduated from Westfield 3 years ago. He's now a graduate student at Stanford studying theoretical physics. Living the dream that Isaiah is fighting for. Dean Okonkwo tracks him down, asks if he'd be willing to give testimony via video conference. He agrees immediately. When he appears on screen, he's sitting in a Stanford physics lab, wearing a hoodie with the Stanford logo. And he tells his story. I had Professor Whitmore for 2 courses my junior year. I had a perfect 4.0 GPA. I'd won undergraduate research awards. And when I approached her about being her research assistant, she told me I should consider less theoretical sciences. She suggested engineering or computer science might be a better fit for someone like me. Someone like me. The phrase hangs heavy. I didn't file a complaint. I was too worried about retaliation, about burning bridges, about being labeled a troublemaker. So I just worked with a different professor and kept my head down. But I've regretted that silence ever since. Because if I'd spoken up then, maybe Isaiah wouldn't be going through this now. His testimony is damning. Because it establishes a pattern. This isn't one student's bad experience. This is systemic behavior spanning years. The evidence is mounting. Student testimonies, email correspondence, documentation of disparate treatment, statistical analysis of research assistant selections over the past decade showing clear racial disparities. But Professor Whitmore has something Isaiah doesn't have. Powerful allies. A member of the Board of Trustees, Harrison Whitmore III, Katherine's cousin, calls Dean Okonkwo's office. The message is clear even if the words are coded. Katherine is an institution at this university. Her family has contributed millions over the years. We need to be very careful about destroying someone's reputation over one disgruntled student. There it is again. One disgruntled student. As if the experiences of multiple students, documented patterns, and clear evidence somehow amount to one person's hurt feelings. Other board members echo similar concerns. They talk about Westfield's reputation, about protecting the university from bad press, about the importance of supporting loyal faculty. The pressure on Dean Okonkwo is immense. She's new. She has limited political capital. Taking on a tenured professor with family connections to the board is risky. But when she meets with university council to discuss options, her response is firm. This isn't about one student. This is about integrity. If we fail to act when we have clear evidence of discriminatory behavior, we're not just failing Isaiah Thompson. We're failing every student who will come after him. And we're telling them that excellence doesn't matter as much as who you know or what you look like. University counsel warns her about the difficulty of the case. Tenure protections. Academic freedom arguments. The likelihood of legal challenges from Whitmore's side. I understand the risks, Dean Okonkwo says. But I also understand the cost of doing nothing. She makes a decision that will change everything. The university announces it will hold a public hearing. This is unusual. These matters are typically handled behind closed doors, resolved quietly through administrative processes. But Dean Okonkwo pushes for transparency. She knows that sunshine is the best disinfectant. That hiding this process will only fuel speculation and allow Whitmore's narrative to dominate. The announcement states that both Professor Whitmore and Isaiah Thompson will have the opportunity to present their cases before a panel consisting of Dean Okonkwo, an external investigator from a civil rights organization, and a representative from the faculty senate. Campus reaction is immediate and divided. Some students rally behind Isaiah. They organize solidarity events. They share their own stories of bias in STEM. They create social media campaigns with hashtags like #BelieveInMerit and #WestfieldAccountability. But others defend Professor Whitmore. They talk about her brilliance as a physicist. They argue that this is political correctness run amok. They claim that maintaining high standards shouldn't be confused with discrimination. They frame the hearing as an attack on academic rigor itself. Faculty members are similarly divided. Some quietly express support for Isaiah. Others circle the wagons around Whitmore, seeing her case as their case, her academic freedom as their academic freedom. The student newspaper runs daily coverage. Opinion pieces from both sides. Interviews with students. Analysis of the university's policies. The night before the hearing, Isaiah is in his dorm room and he's terrified. Tomorrow, he'll have to stand in front of dozens of people and relive every humiliating moment. He'll have to face Professor Whitmore directly. He'll be questioned, scrutinized, doubted. What if they don't believe him? What if his documentation isn't enough? What if this ruins his academic career before it even really begins? He's seriously considering backing out. Sending an email withdrawing his complaint. Just taking the loss and moving on. There's a knock on his door. It's Dr. Martinez. Can we talk? They sit together, and Dr. Martinez tells Isaiah something he needs to hear. You're not just fighting for yourself anymore. You're fighting for everyone who comes after you. Every black kid who'll walk into Whitmore's classroom in the future. Every student of color who'll apply for research positions. Every person who's been told they don't belong in spaces they've earned the right to occupy. He pauses. I know that's a heavy burden. You didn't ask for it. You just wanted to study physics. But sometimes the moment chooses us, and we have to decide if we're going to rise to it. Isaiah is quiet for a long time. Then he nods. An hour later, there's another knock. Isaiah opens the door and there stands his mother. She traveled 8 hours from Detroit. Took time off work she can't really afford to lose. Because her son needs her. They don't say much at first. She just holds him. And then they sit together on his dorm room bed and she tells him what she came to tell him. I didn't raise you to be comfortable. I raised you to be true. To stand up when it would be easier to sit down. To speak up when it would be safer to stay silent. She takes his hand. Tomorrow is going to be hard. The hardest thing you've done. But you can do hard things. You've been doing them your whole life. Isaiah looks at his mother. This woman who sacrificed everything so he could have opportunities she never had. Who worked double shifts so he could have books. Who believed in him when the world said he was just another statistic. And he finds his resolve. Tomorrow he'll walk into that hearing room. He'll tell his truth. He'll present his evidence. And whatever happens, he'll know he didn't shrink. He didn't make himself smaller to make others comfortable. He'll stand in his full height and demand the justice he deserves. Have you ever had to decide between staying silent to keep the peace or speaking up and facing the consequences? Have you ever stood up for what's right even when it cost you something? Share your experience in the comments, because what Isaiah is about to do takes the kind of courage most people never have to find. If you want to see what happens when a system designed to protect powerful people faces someone who refuses to back down, if you want to witness truth facing power in real time, then smash that subscribe button right now. Because what's coming next will give you chills. The hearing is scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Thursday. The university has reserved the largest conference room in the administrative building. It seats about 150 people, and by 1:45, every single seat is filled. Students pack the room. Faculty members line the walls. Local reporters sit in the back with notebooks and recording devices. The air is thick with anticipation, tension, the electric feeling of something important about to happen. At the front of the room, a long table seats the three-person panel. In the center is Dean Okonkwo, composed and professional. To her left is the external investigator, Dr. Sharon Miller, a civil rights attorney and former professor who's made a career of examining institutional bias in academia. To her right is Professor David Richardson, the faculty senate representative, a white-haired philosophy professor known for his fairness. Isaiah sits at a table on one side of the room, Dr. Martinez beside him for support. His mother sits in the front row behind him, her presence a steady anchor. On the other side sits Professor Katherine Whitmore with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman from a prestigious law firm. Whitmore looks calm, controlled, every inch the distinguished professor. Dean Okonkwo calls the hearing to order. Explains the process. This is not a legal trial, she reminds everyone, but a university investigation into allegations of discriminatory conduct. Both parties will present their cases. Witnesses will testify. The panel will ask questions. And then she says, "Professor Whitmore, you may begin." Whitmore stands. She's wearing a navy blue suit, pearls, her silver hair perfectly styled. She looks at the panel, then at the packed room, and she speaks. Her voice is steady, confident. The voice of someone who's commanded lecture halls for 3 decades. I hold all my students to the highest standards regardless of background. My commitment to excellence in physics education is the foundation of my 30-year career at this institution. Mr. Thompson's accusations are not only baseless, they are frankly insulting to everything I've dedicated my life to. She pauses for effect. Let that sink in. She's the victim here, her tone suggests. Her reputation under attack. I selected Brandon Fitzgerald as my research assistant because his proposal demonstrated the kind of innovative thinking required for cutting-edge quantum computing research. My decision was based purely on academic merit, as all my decisions have been throughout my career. She presents her evidence. Grade distributions from her classes over the past 5 years, showing a range of students receiving as BS, CS. See, her evidence suggests I'm fair to everyone. Character witnesses take the stand. Senior faculty members who've known Whitmore for decades. They vouch for her integrity, her dedication, her brilliance as a physicist. Katherine Whitmore is one of the finest physicists I've ever worked with, says one colleague. The suggestion that she would discriminate based on race is absurd. She cares only about scientific excellence. Another adds, I've watched her mentor countless students over the years. She pushes them hard because she believes in them. That's not discrimination. That's good teaching. She's convincing, polished, professional, even sympathetic in some moments, portraying herself as a dedicated educator now facing career destruction because of one student's hurt feelings. During a break in the proceedings, you can hear students whispering. Some look doubtful. Maybe they got it wrong. Maybe this really is just about a student who couldn't handle rejection. But then it's Isaiah's turn. He stands, walks to the front, and for a moment he just looks at the packed room. All these people watching him, judging him, deciding whether to believe him. He's nervous. You can see it in the slight tremor of his hands as he opens his folder. But he's also prepared. My name is Isaiah Thompson. I'm a sophomore physics major here at Westfield. I came to this university on a full academic scholarship because of my aptitude in physics. I came here to learn from the best, to push myself, to become the physicist I've dreamed of being since I was a kid. He pauses, takes a breath. What I didn't expect was that I'd have to fight to be seen as a scholar instead of an athlete. That I'd have to prove my intelligence over and over again, while watching other students be given the benefit of the doubt I was never afforded. And then he presents his timeline. Incident by incident. Date by date. With documentation. September 8th, first day of class. Professor Whitmore asks which sports scholarship brought me here. I responded that I'm on an academic scholarship. She moved on without acknowledgement. September 15th. Raised my hand 3 times during lecture. Was ignored each time. Other students were called on immediately. September 22nd. Provided correct, detailed answer about quantum entanglement. Was told I was merely memorizing, not understanding. Multiple witnesses present. October 3rd. Requested recommendation letter for research assistant application. Was told Professor Whitmore didn't know me well enough, despite having taken 2 of her courses with A+ grades. On and on. Each incident documented. Each one seemingly small on its own. But together? Together they form an undeniable pattern. Then the witnesses testify. Sarah Chin takes the stand. She describes the classroom dynamics she witnessed. Isaiah would give brilliant answers and Professor Whitmore would dismiss them. But when Brandon or I gave partial answers, she'd encourage us, build on our thoughts. The differential treatment was obvious to all of us. Priya Kapoor follows. As a woman in STEM, I know what bias looks like. I see it directed at me sometimes. But what I watched Professor Whitmore do to Isaiah was different. More persistent. More personal. She seemed to have decided from day one that he didn't belong in her classroom. Then Brandon's written statement is read aloud. The room goes completely silent as the words echo through the conference room. Before Professor Whitmore announced me as her research assistant, she called me into her office. She told me, and I quote, "You're the kind of student who represents Westfield's legacy." At the time, I didn't understand what she meant. But after seeing the reaction to my selection, after comparing my proposal to Isaiah Thompson's, I understand now. She meant I look like what she thinks a physicist should look like. I'm white. I come from a wealthy family. I fit her image of Westfield. Isaiah's proposal was superior to mine by any objective measure, and I believe he should have been selected. You can hear people shifting in their seats. This isn't coming from Isaiah or his friends. This is coming from the student Whitmore chose. The insider. The one who benefited from her bias. And then, on a large screen at the front of the room, Terrence Williams appears via video link. He's in a Stanford physics lab wearing a Stanford hoodie. Living proof that you can overcome bias and thrive. But also living proof that the bias exists. My name is Terrence Williams. I graduated from Westfield 3 years ago with a degree in physics. I'm now a PhD student at Stanford studying theoretical physics. He takes a breath and you can see this is hard for him. Painful. I had Professor Whitmore for 2 courses my junior year. I had a 4.0 GPA. I had 1 undergraduate research awards. And when I approached her about being her research assistant, she told me I should consider less theoretical sciences. She suggested engineering or computer science might be a better fit for someone like me. His voice hardens with the memory. I asked her what she meant by someone like me. And she said, practical students. But we both knew what she really meant. She meant black students. Students who, in her view, might be smart enough for applied sciences but not for the theoretical work, the real intellectual work of physics. The room is absolutely silent now. No whispers. No movement. Just the weight of his words settling over everyone. I didn't file a complaint. I was too scared of retaliation, too worried about my future. I've regretted that silence every day since. Because my silence meant she kept doing this to other students. My silence meant Isaiah had to fight this battle alone. When his testimony ends, you can see people crying. Not just students of color who recognize this story as their own. White students too. Faculty members. People confronting an ugly truth about an institution they love. The external investigator, Dr. Miller, stands. She's been quiet until now, taking notes, observing. But now it's her turn to ask questions. She addresses Professor Whitmore directly. Professor Whitmore, can you explain why Mr. Thompson's proposal, which included published research, was rejected in favor of a proposal with no prior publication? Whitmore straightens in her chair. Academic merit isn't determined solely by publication. Original thinking, innovative approaches, these matter more than. Dr. Miller cuts in. But you listed publication as a preferred criteria in the application announcement, did you not? Whitmore hesitates. Well, yes, but it's just one factor among. You stated, and I quote, prior publication in peer-reviewed journals will be given significant weight. Your words, Professor. Whitmore's composure slips for just a moment. Mr. Fitzgerald's proposal showed more innovation in its approach to. Did it? Dr. Miller pulls out 2 documents. These are the proposals submitted by Mr. Thompson and Mr. Fitzgerald. I took the liberty of removing all identifying information and submitting them to 3 physics professors at other universities for blind review. None of them knew which student wrote which proposal. Would you like to know how they ranked them? The room holds its breath. All 3 reviewers ranked Mr. Thompson's proposal significantly higher. One called it graduate-level work from an undergraduate. Another said it showed exceptional grasp of quantum error correction principles with novel applications. The third noted that Mr. Fitzgerald's proposal, while competent, lacked the theoretical depth and originality of the other submission. Whitmore's face goes pale. Her attorney whispers something to her, but she doesn't respond. Isaiah feels the shift in the room. People leaning forward. Murmuring. The tide turning. Dr. Miller isn't finished. Dr. Whitmore, do you recall an email you sent to the previous dean 8 months ago about maintaining departmental standards? I send many emails about departmental matters. The email appears on the screen at the front of the room, large enough for everyone to read. I am concerned about recent admissions trends and how they might impact the quality and culture of our program. We must maintain the rigorous standards and traditional excellence that have made Westfield's physics department elite. I worry that certain students, while perhaps adequately prepared on paper, may not be the right fit for our most advanced research opportunities. We cannot allow diversity initiatives to compromise academic excellence or lower our expectations. The words hang there, projected for everyone to see. That was taken out of context, Whitmore says quickly. I was talking about academic preparedness, not about. Dean Okonkwo speaks for the first time since opening the hearing. Her voice is quiet but cuts through the room like steel. What context makes this appropriate, Professor? What context makes it acceptable to suggest that diversity and excellence are somehow opposed? What context justifies talking about certain students and cultural fit when discussing academic merit? Whitmore's composure cracks. I've dedicated my life to this department. My family has given millions to this university. I won't be accused of. But her protests sound hollow now. Defensive. The mask is slipping and everyone can see what's underneath. Dr. Martinez stands. He's called as the final witness, and there's something in his expression. Resolve. The look of someone who's been waiting years for this moment. My name is Dr. Harold Martinez. I've been a professor in the physics department for 15 years. And I've been documenting Professor Whitmore's student selections for all of those years. He opens a laptop, pulls up a presentation. Numbers, charts, data. In 15 years, Professor Whitmore has selected 23 research assistants. 22 were white. 1 was Asian. 0 were black. 0 were Latino. This, despite the fact that qualified black and Latino students applied for these positions multiple times. He clicks to the next slide. More data. I compared her selection rates to other professors in the department. The statistical disparity is significant. In fact, it's mathematically improbable without bias. Whitmore tries to interrupt. Each of those selections was based on individual merit. Martinez looks at her directly. I'm not arguing about individual cases, Professor. I'm showing a pattern that speaks for itself. 23 positions. 22 white students. 1 Asian student. 0 black or Latino students. Over 15 years. What are the odds of that happening by chance in a department where approximately 15% of applicants are students of color? He clicks to another slide. The statistical analysis. The probability calculations. Less than 1%. Less than 1% chance that this happens without systematic bias in the selection process. The room is stunned. This isn't about one rejection anymore. This isn't about Isaiah's hurt feelings. This is about a pattern of discrimination spanning more than a decade. Isaiah watches Professor Whitmore's defenses crumble in real time. She's no longer the composed, distinguished professor. She's exposed. Her carefully constructed image of fairness shattered by mathematics, by data, by undeniable evidence. She tries to speak. I selected the best candidates. but her words trail off. Because how do you argue with numbers? How do you explain away 15 years of statistical impossibility? The room is silent except for shocked whispers. Students processing what they're hearing. Faculty members confronting their own complicity in a system that let this continue for so long. Dean Okonkwo closes her notebook. Thank you all for your testimony. The panel will deliberate and announce our decision within 48 hours. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the hearing room, students surround Isaiah. The hallway is packed with people wanting to express support, solidarity, to apologize for doubting him. I'm sorry I didn't see it before, one student says. You were so brave in there, says another. Sarah and Priya are there hugging him, crying. You did it. You actually did it. Brandon approaches and there are tears in his eyes. I'm declining the assistantship. Whatever the panel decides, it should be yours. It was always yours. Isaiah is overwhelmed, vindicated, exhausted. All of it hitting him at once. For weeks he's been carrying this weight. The burden of proof. The fear that he wouldn't be believed. And now, standing in this hallway surrounded by support, it's finally releasing. But he can't fully celebrate yet. The panel hasn't made its decision. Whitmore could still walk away with just a slap on the wrist. The system could still protect her. By that evening, local news has picked up the story. Prestigious university faces discrimination allegations in physics department, runs on the evening news. Social media explodes with discussions about bias in STEM, about what it takes to prove discrimination, about the courage of students who speak up. Isaiah's phone is blowing up. Messages of support from people he's never met. Interview requests from newspapers and podcasts. Organizations advocating for equity in education reaching out. He turns off his phone, goes back to his dorm, sits with his mother. Dr. Martinez stops by. You did it? You stood up. Isaiah shakes his head. We did it. I couldn't have done this alone. And that's the truth, isn't it? Justice isn't a solo act. It requires allies. It requires people in positions of power willing to use that power for good. It requires witnesses willing to speak truth even when it's uncomfortable. That night, Isaiah can't sleep. He lies in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting. 48 hours feels like an eternity. 48 hours later, Dean Okonkwo calls a press conference. The announcement will be made publicly, another unusual step, but one she insists on. Transparency, she says, is the only path to trust. Isaiah sits in the front row. His mother beside him. Dr. Martinez, Sarah, Priya, Brandon, all of them together. The room is packed with press, students, faculty. The panel sits at a table at the front. Dean Okonkwo speaks, her voice clear and firm. After careful review of all testimony, evidence, and documentation, the panel has reached a unanimous decision. Professor Katherine Whitmore will be placed on immediate administrative leave pending a full review of her tenure. Given the severity and documented pattern of discriminatory conduct, the likely outcome of this review will be termination or forced retirement. The room erupts. Gasp. Some cheers from students. Angry murmurs from Whitmore's supporters. Dean Okonkwo continues. The university issues a formal apology to Isaiah Thompson and to all students who were subjected to discriminatory treatment in Professor Whitmore's classes. We failed in our duty to provide an equitable learning environment, and we take full responsibility for that failure. She pauses, looks directly at Isaiah. Additionally, the research assistant position will be offered to Mr. Thompson, along with a formal letter of apology and support for his graduate school applications. Isaiah's mother grabs his hand, squeezes tight. There are tears running down her face. Furthermore, the university is implementing immediate reforms. All faculty will undergo mandatory bias training. We're establishing an anonymous complaint system for students. We're creating new oversight mechanisms for research assistant selections and other departmental opportunities. And we're launching diversity and inclusion initiatives specifically in our STEM departments. After the press conference, Dean Okonkwo asks to speak with Isaiah privately. In her office, she looks at him with genuine respect. This took courage. More courage than any 19-year-old should have to show. The university failed you by not catching this sooner. We should have been watching. We should have been listening. We're going to do better. Isaiah nods, then says something that shows who he really is. I didn't do this for an apology. I did it so the next person won't have to fight this hard. So the next black student who walks into a physics classroom will be seen as a physicist first, not as an assumption. Dean Okonkwo smiles. And that's exactly why you'll make an exceptional physicist. You understand that science is about truth wherever it leads, even when that truth is uncomfortable. 6 months pass. Spring semester. The campus is coming alive with new growth, warmer weather, the energy of students preparing for finals. Isaiah is in a research lab, working alongside Dr. Martinez. They're collaborating on quantum computing research, the very research Isaiah proposed in his application. And it's going brilliantly. They've made real progress on error correction protocols, enough that they're preparing a paper for submission to a major physics journal. This is exceptional work, Isaiah, Dr. Martinez says, reviewing their latest results. This is going to make waves. And it's not just the research going well. The graduate school acceptance letters have been arriving. MIT, Stanford, Princeton. All with full funding. All eager to have him. His mother visits campus for a weekend. Isaiah gives her a tour of his lab, introduces her to his professors. She meets Dean Okonkwo, who tells her, "Your son is remarkable. Not just brilliant but brave." Isaiah's mother cries watching him in his element. Seeing him respected. Thriving. Becoming everything she dreamed for him. There's a moment that Isaiah will remember forever. He's guest lecturing in an introductory physics course, filling in for a professor who's out sick. The classroom is diverse in a way Whitmore's classroom never was. Students of all backgrounds, all engaged, all eager to learn. He's explaining wave-particle duality, and a young black girl in the front row raises her hand with a question. It's a brilliant question, one that shows she's really thinking about the material. Isaiah's face lights up. Excellent reasoning. Tell us more about your thinking. He encourages her. Builds on her ideas. Shows her that her thoughts matter, that she belongs in this space. And in that moment, Isaiah understands. The cycle of mentorship is continuing. Mrs. Rodriguez believed in him, stayed late to tutor him. Dr. Martinez supported him, documented the truth. And now it's his turn. His turn to be the professor who sees students for who they are, who creates space for excellence regardless of what it looks like. As for Professor Katherine Whitmore, she retired from Westfield quietly. No criminal charges were filed, but her reputation was destroyed. She wrote an op-ed claiming she was a victim of political correctness, that her academic freedom had been violated. The op-ed was widely criticized. Even some of her former supporters distanced themselves. Because the evidence was too clear. The pattern too undeniable. Some of her old guard colleagues still defend her privately, but publicly most recognize what happened. What she did. She faded from academic circles. No speaking engagements. No consulting work. No legacy of respected mentorship. Just a cautionary tale. A reminder that reputation built on bias eventually crumbles. That excellence can't be gate-kept forever. That truth, even when delayed, eventually emerges. We don't dwell on her downfall. But we acknowledge it. Because consequences matter. Accountability matters. Westfield University doesn't just apologize and move on. They actually implement changes. Real, systemic changes. Mandatory bias training for all faculty, not just a one-time seminar but ongoing education. An anonymous complaint system where students can report discrimination without fear of retaliation. New oversight mechanisms for research opportunities, internships, any program where selection bias could occur. The physics department specifically launches diversity initiatives. Recruiting students from underrepresented backgrounds. Creating mentorship programs. Building a culture where merit is actually about merit, not about who fits a preconceived image. And Isaiah? Isaiah becomes the face of these changes. Not because he sought it, but because his story matters. The university features him in promotional materials, but not as tokenism. As genuine inclusion. They film a student testimonial video where he speaks about belonging. I almost left Westfield. I almost believed I didn't belong here. But I belonged all along. The system needed to change, not me. And when enough people stood up and said that change was necessary, it happened. Other universities reach out. They want Isaiah to speak at their campuses, to share his story, to help them examine their own systems. He becomes an advocate for equity in STEM, speaking at conferences, writing op-eds, mentoring high school students of color who dream of careers in science. He tells them what his mother told him. You belong in any space you've earned the right to occupy. Don't shrink. Don't doubt yourself. And when you face obstacles, know that speaking up isn't just about you. It's about everyone who comes after you. The final scene takes us back to where it all began. That same lecture hall. Advanced Quantum Physics 401. But Isaiah is standing at the podium now. Not as a student. As a teaching assistant for the new professor, Someone who actually values diverse perspectives and sees excellence regardless of what it looks like. The classroom is full. Students engaged, taking notes, asking questions. The atmosphere is completely different from those early days with Whitmore. This is collaborative, respectful, based on merit that's actually about merit. Isaiah poses a complex question to the class about quantum entanglement. A young black student raises his hand, answers with brilliant reasoning. And Isaiah's response? Excellent reasoning. Tell us more about your thinking. He encourages. He builds on ideas. He creates space for excellence to flourish. The camera pulls back slowly. We see Isaiah at that podium where Whitmore once stood. But everything is different now. The students are engaged. The learning is genuine. The space is equitable. We freeze on Isaiah's encouraging smile. On his face you can see everything he's overcome. Every obstacle. Every assumption he's defeated. Every barrier he's broken. Text appears on screen. Excellence isn't determined by appearance. It's determined by dedication, intellect, and integrity. And then one final message. For every student who's been underestimated, keep proving them wrong. The screen fades to black. But before it does, we hear Isaiah's voice one last time, speaking to his class. Physics is the study of universal truths. It doesn't care about your background, your race, your gender. It only cares whether you're willing to do the work to understand it. And every single person in this room has earned the right to be here. Remember that. Have you ever been told you don't belong somewhere you absolutely do? Have you ever had to prove yourself over and over while watching others be given opportunities freely? Share your story in the comments because every story of perseverance matters. Every voice speaking truth helps build a better system for those who come next. If this story moved you, if you believe that merit should actually mean merit, that excellence comes in all forms, that institutions must be held accountable when they fail their students, then hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Because the fight for equity doesn't end here. It continues with every person willing to stand up, speak out, and refuse to accept that bias is just the way things are. Isaiah Thompson stood up. And because he did, the next student won't have to fight as hard. That's how change happens. One brave person at a time.